Hey everybody, it's Karen Anderson here with Aortic Hope. This is a very special live event calling all Canadians and anybody else that's interested in learning a lot of interesting information tonight. We are here tonight, and I hope I didn't even ask to get the correct pronunciation of your names. I'm so sorry. With Dr. Hajjar. Did I say that right? Oh my gosh. And Cynthia, I'm just going to call you Cynthia
That's
because
fine.
I'm not going to begin. I'm just not. It's fine. And I have a special co-host, and that is our own Velda Mackenzie, everybody. And we are going to be talking about Loeys-Dietz syndrome. And what's great about this is I just talked about it on Monday's Week in Review from last week. So it's important. I think that it's important that we discuss more of these connective tissue disorders and these different syndromes. We were just talking earlier before we got started about how about 30% of the aortic disease community has a known syndrome and 70% do not. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep educating ourselves in case we need to educate others. So before we get into it, I'm going to ask everybody to please click like, please click subscribe, click the little bell so that you're notified every time we go live. And now we can go ahead and talk about it. So I'm going to let both of you introduce yourself a little bit before we get started. Dr. Jar.
Thank you so much, Karen, for inviting me today. And, like it's, as you said, it is so important, although we are rare compared to the bigger aortic community. But I think it's important because it does affect, it is a fatal manifestation of the diseases, the rare diseases that myself and Cynthia are representing today. So my name is Jida, and I'm the Executive Director of the Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation Canada. And I'm very happy to present on LDS and what we do here in Canada.
Cynthia.
Yes, hi. Again, thanks very much for having me. And I was diagnosed with Loeys-Dietz back in 2007, only 2 years after it was discovered, and then had my aortic root replacement in 2009. And that surgery ended my career. I was a police officer for 25 years up to that point. And I realized throughout the journey that it is a very lonely journey, and the connections that we don't have or that we didn't have and where we are today has made a huge difference. We still have a long way to go, but it's having presentations such as this one and allowing the community of people who are dealing with this to be able to talk to people who have it or who have had a journey with it, and to be able to share the information that makes a difference. So I do this. I work with Jida or volunteer wherever she wants me. I'll show up and share my story just to let people know that there is hope, as difficult as the journey is, because it is, but there is hope and strength in being able to connect with each other.
So let's talk about what is LDS. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen because I prepared a small presentation for everyone joining us today. All right. So briefly, I will introduce the heritable thoracic aortic diseases and LDS as part of the acronym is HTAD. So it's important to understand that LDS, Marfan, VEDS, all these diseases that we hear about, and probably in the context of these groups when you meet, it's a connective tissue disorder. And the connective tissue is really a tissue that is everywhere in our body. The role of the connective tissue is multiple, and it's very important to connect all the organs together, support our organs together, bind and protect as well these organs. So when it's a structural tissue, and when we have malfunctioning tissue or a tissue that is not properly structured, this is where we see these different rare diseases. So LDS is a rare connective tissue disorder, and as I said, it is everywhere. So when a person has LDS or any other type of connective tissue disorder, the manifestations are multisystemic. So yes, aorta is the organ that we really monitor the most for a patient with LDS or Marfan or VEDS. It's because it can be fatal, but these patients also have other problems in their body that can include skin issues or musculoskeletal issues or spine issues. A lot of our patients have spine issues, joints, digestive issues. Now we're learning more and more about that as well. So yes, there is a high aortic dissection or aortic aneurysm issue, but also there are other systemic manifestations. And here I want to really, one of the main advocacy that we keep pushing for, because they are so rare and we don't know yet the exact prevalence of LDS specifically, we know that of Marfan. But we need to identify these patients, because if we do not diagnose these patients on a timely manner and accurately, they have a really high risk, as you mentioned, Karen, in your presentation earlier, for catastrophic events, which is an aortic rupture. And for the patients that survive a catastrophic event like an aortic rupture, they will have huge changes in their quality of life. So it's very, very important that we identify these patients early, and hence the genetic testing and all the other stuff that I will explain a little bit later. So the vision of how to treat LDS and related disorders, we have the patient at the center. We really advocate for having a patient-centered care so that all the disciplines that surround the patient are like built around all the manifestations and all the symptoms and signs of the patient that needs to be addressed. For sure, we start by the disciplines that are responsible of the lifespan. So, we need to treat if there's any aortic aneurysm that need to be treated, or if there was an aortic, a risk of an aortic dissection. But then around it, we need to have all the different disciplines that are also involved in improving the quality of life of these patients, like orthopedics, ophthalmology, because they would have, I don't know, sorry, I don't know why it's going on timing, and I don't know how to stop this. And genetics, as we said, like if there's a family screening even that need to be done after, etc. So this is what we advocate for. This is the vision of what a perfect care for a Lois Dietz patient is.
And I don't mean to interrupt you right there, but if you go back to that screen, I need you to send this screen to me, okay? Because I never really gave it that much thought. And I think even, of course, more important for people with a known connective tissue disorder, but we often talk about in the States here, finding an aortic center, and they're not necessarily called a center. Some are called Marfan designated centers, right? But if you don't have Marfans, you can still go there. And if you have Marfans, you can go to one that's a non-Marfan center. So it's just titles. It's just fluff stuff. I personally feel, I could be wrong, but you want to go to an aortic center. You want your cardiologist, your hypertension specialist, thoracic surgeon, and your vascular surgeon. But I never even gave any thought to, you might want to have a conversation with a good anesthesiologist. You want to know your geneticist is there. Cardiac rehab understands your needs, which are different than somebody who had heart surgery, right? It's different. Respiratory. I mean, I would think a lot of us
risk of pneumothorax,
exactly, never gave any of this any thought. I mean, including your pharmacist, because things are going to be changing. You need them to look at these drugs and side effects and stuff. So this is truly what your very best multidisciplinary team looks like. And I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. I will send you that slide for sure.
Thank you.
So here, I also heard before going live that we talked about the trauma associated with a disease like that. So I really wanted to share here a story of one of our patients, Amiel, who the minute he knew about his diagnosis, it was traumatizing for him. And this is a piece that he wrote saying this is how he knew about the disease, is that they told him you have it, and that just kept going in his mind. You have it. And for him, it was a lot about grief
Yes.
A lot about like he as Cynthia mentioned, she's someone who works out a lot, and all of the sudden he has to change how he exercise, has to change how he do as a everyday life, and that
Right.
was traumatizing for him to find a new identity for himself. Same here. I wanted to also like give a quick snapshot of a parent for a child living with LDS and how much it's also a burden on the caregiver, understanding all the different manifestations of this disease and the genetic testing, and if other siblings need to be tested, if not, like, and educate also the siblings on that. So I wanted to also showcase how much it's also not only for the patient, but for the family sometimes.
Right.
So about us. Our vision is so we were founded in 2011 because three members their children have LDS, and they realized there was no foundation in Canada to help patients with LDS and related disorders. And the vision has been clear from the beginning. We want to improve longevity, and we want to improve the quality of life of the patients. And to do that, we do through awareness and advocacy, patient support, helping to have better clinical care in the hospital institutions here in Canada, research and education. And I like to say, instead of values like currencies, because I do believe that as a foundation, we have different currencies that we can, I don't know why
It's okay.
sorry, I'm like, I don't know why it's doing this. It just don't want me to have that slide on.
It
But
was pretty. It's okay. It's all right.
so it's not, as a foundation, we definitely like have grants and you provide funding, but I also, so just a quick note here, I come from before joining Lois Dietz and jumping into that rare disease wagon, I used to work in oncology and cancer, where everybody knows about cancer. It's so the awareness about especially breast cancer was so great that you didn't need to advocate so much because people are very well aware about breast cancer. But then you come into rare diseases where even like the names are sometimes very difficult for people to like say. I find the role of patient groups is very important for that advocacy and
Huge.
awareness, which you don't see in like diseases that are more common.
Mm-hmm.
And the leadership comes a lot also from patient groups to change things. And you'll see like the registry and the research capacity, etc. So rallying all these great experts that you have in Canada together to build and change the ecosystem here is important. So I just wanted to highlight of the role of a foundation for rare disease is different than other diseases. So one of our big event that we do with another foundation for genetic aortic diseases, GADA. So we co-sponsor this. It's the HAT Symposium. We work with all the leaders in aortic disorders in Canada. And so we rotate in the different cities in Canada, and it's 2 days, one day for medical professionals, and the other day is for patients and caregivers. And it's been a success to educate patients and families, as well as professionals, to know about the latest research.
What time of year does that happen, and how would people be able to get information about
Every
that?
2 years. It's every
Oh,
two
okay.
years, and we go into different cities. So the next year it will be in Vancouver, 2026. So stay tuned if you're Canadian listening to us. So we'll be in Vancouver next year. We also do a partnership with other societies. So as I said, it's a multisystemic disease. So we partnered with the Canadian Spine Society, for example, to educate their professionals on Lois Dietz. This year we went to dentists and implantologists because they also have a lot of dental issues. So we needed to raise awareness as well. And it was in New Orleans, as you can see. And I didn't know when I was in New Orleans that it was during Mardi Gras. So I was
Oh,
so
wow.
happy to like see Mardi Gras for the first time.
Oh, that must have been fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
We also create educational booklets. So we listen to the community and we see, okay, where are the gaps in education? Where do you need more knowledge? And we create these different booklets that to empower more the patients and the families. And you can find these on our website, and they're translated to French as well. We also have a dedicated person, Lindsay. She's my ride or die at the foundation. She's great, and she's the one who receives the calls from patients or emails looking for resources, trying to find an expert or any questions they have about LDS or even other diseases. Like we have some patients from Marfan or VEDS that reach out. So we provide with any information or resource they need. And we have a resource directory of over 400 resources right now. So, and we can help with that, navigating them to these resources.
That's great.
We also help our clinicians. So here you see, it's the latest aortic clinic that got established in Canada. So it was at the Montreal Children's Hospital. This is Dr. Tiscar Caviller-Garrido. She is one of our biggest champion. And we helped her build her business case to her hospital so that she can get the time and the funding and everything to build an aortic clinic in her hospital. So we support that. We support all these different clinicians with the resources they need, if they need data, if they need anything to help build these aortic clinics across Canada. We also do a lot of advocacy. So also between parentheses here, Canada now has, in the last 5 years, there has been a momentum in building a national strategy for rare diseases. And so we've been very much involved in this. There was 1.5 billion announced for rare disease strategy in Canada. And specifically where we are in Quebec, they're also building a provincial strategy. So it's to improve diagnosis, so genetic testing. So we're advocating for harmonizing genetic testing, for example, building networks of expertise. So those aortic clinics get funding to create more of these clinics for rare diseases. That is important to improve the care of these patients. So we're very much involved in these consultations as well. We also support research. So that was research grants that we provide seed funding for young investigators here in Canada. So we want to build that research capacity as well, so that hopefully they continue working in this space and become like the experts of the future in these diseases. And the biggest accomplishment so far has been building a registry in Canada. We do not have Canadian data. We do not know how many patients are in Canada that have LDS, Marfan, VEDS, or HTAD, like all the different HTAD. So with Dr. Tiscar Caviller-Garrido and Dr. Tim Bradley, they're the co-PIs on this registry, and 15 other investigators across Canada were building this registry. We started collecting the data this year. So we're very excited that hopefully next year we can start having some data in Canada to understand how are these patients, how many of these patients are in Canada, are being treated in Canada, how the outcomes, how were they treated, just to have to start building that evidence. So when we want to advocate for changing in policy, or we want to do more research in Canada, we have some data to back it up. And we also started funding some research proposals that will come out of that CANACT registry. So here we are collaborating with Professor Benedict Hallgrimsson from Calgary, and he's very much interested to see if the severity of facial manifestations correlate with severity of aortic manifestations. So he have a really a very innovative 3D camera that takes images of the face and then correlates that in studying if there is any severity in the aortic manifestations as well. And that will help in improving care eventually for these patients. We're also working on dental imaging because these patients, as I said, have a lot of dental manifestation. And the next steps for that is to build a biobank, since there are no biobank in Canada. So that's the next step after the registry. And that's it. That's what I want to give you a snapshot of what we do and the
Amazing.
future of what we're doing at that foundation. But if you have any questions, let me know. So thank you so
Well,
much.
no, thank you. One of the things that I took so many notes. A lot of shorthand going on here. One of the things that you mentioned, which we had talked about ever so briefly, was the trauma after diagnosis. And what that child had mentioned was feeling a sense of grief. And I think that for everyone, that seems to be overlooked. You can receive a diagnosis. And, when I found out, my genetic testing came back so far pretty much negative, nothing yet for an aortopathy. But then all of a sudden it came back positive for cardiomyopathy. And I was like, wait, what did you say? What does that mean? And, they're trying to explain it to me well, you don't have to wait. The gene's not turned on yet. You've had this since birth. I don't worry. Of course, what did I do? I Googled it. And then I started sweating, and I was so stressed out. And then you're like, denial. Let me negotiate this. I'm angry, I'm scared, everything that can do with grief.
Yeah.
And then I finally one day just washed it all away and I became almost elated because I thought, wow, somebody knows something about me. And now they're going to look at me with a different set of eyes and they're going to be ahead of the curve than trying to fix me when something happens. We're just going to be proactive and make sure it doesn't happen. And if it starts to look like it's going to happen, we're going to make it better before it even becomes worse. So I had to look at that and say, what happened to my father isn't going to happen to me. He didn't know, but now I know. And
Yeah.
so I've just, in a way, controlled the situation that could potentially extend my life and make things easier. So, but I had to really let that go because you get that diagnosis and it's like, but that's with everything. I have
Yeah.
Crohn's disease and I went into remission. Then I only found out last year I'm out of remission. And it's like you immediately, everything sinks and you try to map out everything and say, well, no, maybe I don't, maybe it's not real, somebody else's biopsy result. So I'm just going to do what I want still and eat and you just try to ignore what this is the fact. This is the body. It is what it
Yeah.
is. Right. So I talk about that a little bit more if you could, because I don't think physicians in the hospital, I don't think we discuss it enough,
I feel, especially for these diseases, like compared, let's say, cancer patients,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, they don't look sick, but they are sick. They
Yeah.
are sick. So that also comes with a stigma, like, oh, but you are not that sick. But as Cynthia mentioned, like she's getting out of the surgery, she feels like she's healthy, but she's actually not healthy. She
Right.
might get into a catastrophic event. But the thing is to avoid that catastrophic event, that big unknown. Once you get that diagnosis, eventually you get to be okay. Now the information I received is actually some power and some, as you say also, Karen, your word control.
Mm-hmm.
But so much grief has to happen
Yes.
in that path. So much grief until you get to the point where you accept finally the information, you accept finally the diagnosis. But how can you say, like, to a 30-year-old person who for him is like is still blooming and like wanna the still starting his life,
Mm-hmm.
to start grieving
Right.
on things that they love and that things that they have big passions for,
Mm-hmm.
and like, hey, rethink your life because you have this diagnosis. It takes
It's hard.
a lot of
Yeah.
yeah, it takes years, even not a year, years
And I
to
think there's a
finally get
lot
to.
to be said in how that information's delivered. And Velda, I'm going to ask you because us being the two that have had a dissection, and I don't think that I remember you saying you have a known connective tissue disorder, but when you're told, at least my story, when I was told there's a dissection, it was fear in the doctor's eyes. So that created trauma right there. It's like you have 5 minutes, figure out where we're going to life flight you. And the way they delivered it allowed me to know this is severe. And then my brain goes into we gotta fix this now and we're gonna go into shock so that you can just go through these motions. So I don't know, like, did you, Velda, experience this type of grief or feel like the same trauma that we're talking about with having had a dissection or any subsequent diagnosis?
Oh, definitely. I went through grief and I'm still going through it, but I stop and get myself through it sometimes, but
Yeah.
it still happens. I grieve the me that used to be. I grieve the
Yeah.
person I used to be,
Absolutely.
and I keep telling doctors and nurses, I
Yeah.
used to be a fitness instructor. I used to
Mhm.
be fit. I used to do aerobics. I used to do exercises all the time. I used to lift weights. I can't do any of that now. You know,
Mhm.
I can barely walk. I have to use a cane when
Yeah.
I walk. So I do grieve every time I move. I grieve
Yeah.
the old
Yeah.
me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. So
Yeah.
before I ask any other questions, I want to just, and before, because I want to get to Cynthia's story too. I want to
Yeah.
hear a little bit more about this. Um, I want to just check in with Josh and just see if there's people that we need to say hi to or anything I need to address.
Hello, ladies. You guys are doing a very good job. We're going to start at the top of the chat list. Martha says, hello from Ontario. Looking forward to this live Q&A. Martha is our co-host of Aortic Canada. Christina, our cowgirl, says hello. She'll be around for about 30 minutes. Josie says, hi, Martha. Hello from Clinton, Ontario. Rob, Aortic Chef Rob, says, Velda, you are a star.
Oh.
Brenny says, hey. Hey, Brenny. Molly has joined the chat. Hello, peeps. Looking good, Velda. Jeanette Hogan, good evening. Velda, you are rocking.
Everybody
I
was a
have many
fan of
You're a
fans.
Velda.
star, Velda.
Many fans.
You do.
I pay them really well.
Yes, you do. Ken says, hello, Velda. Hello, Karen. Hello, Cynthia. Hello, Dr. Jida. Ken's joining us from Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah.
Natalie says, wow, documents in French. Merci beaucoup.
Ooh.
She says, hello, everyone, and it's so excited to be here. And Jeanette asks, how do we find a list of the aortic clinics by province?
Mm.
On our website, I'll share the link actually here, so they can find it by province.
And that catches us up to chat.
Okay. You can put that right into the chat, or if you want to pull that up on your slide. And so while you are doing that, so that we're not in just time, I'm going to keep it going. Cynthia, please, if you're comfortable, we'd love to hear your story because it's very different than Velda and our stories. So please share with
Yeah.
us a little bit.
Sure. Thanks very much, Karen. I want to preface my story, and the reason I like to explain it is that it's very different than most people's story. And when we talk about our healthcare, most of us are just dealing with it from a basic family background. You live and grow up in the same city, or maybe you move one time. And it's complicated enough with that. But when you add, like in my case, I was adopted, add that into the mix. And then I was transferred all over the country and add that into the mix. So it's already difficult enough. And then when you sprinkle these other things on top of it, it's easy to get overwhelmed by it. And, I just want to speak to people to say, look, even with those things, and you're thinking, well, there's no way we're going to be able to figure this out. I just want people to recognize that you can still do it. And another part of my story that is different is I was a police officer for 25 years. So I basically broke every rule about what someone with my syndrome shouldn't do. And I'm not saying you should do it. What I'm saying is that it can manifest so differently between people. And if you look normal, which with aortic issues you do, I looked normal. So I was a healthy police officer. So when I tried to express different issues, well, you're fine, look at you. So again, for the people in your audience that are going, well, or if they have difficult decisions to make and they're telling themselves, well, no, I'm fine. I do this, I do that, everything. Be open to the idea that you may not be. And one of the most important decisions you ever make is the decision to be able to say, okay, I need to look at this differently. And so for myself, when I was doing it, I had the advantage of being a police officer. I'm used to investigating complicated files and nitpicking right down into these little details that people don't think are important. So I drove people crazy because of it, but ultimately it saved my life. So just very quickly with my story is I was adopted. I was the really extra flexible kid that didn't fit into the family, so which was perfect because I was adopted, right? Nobody thought anything different of that. And then I eventually decided to join. I was with the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and when I wanted to join, they wanted my medical background, which I did not have. So I wrote to social services just looking for any non-identifying information I could get that would give me some background. I got the information, and with that form, this would have been in, I don't know, 1982 maybe, there was this new thing, this computer that had a national registry. So with my information from social services, they asked if I wanted to register for a national adoption registry in case my birth parents were ever looking for me, which I just filled the form in, sent it in. And about a year later, got notification my birth mother was looking for me.
Mm-hmm.
So we made a connection in my early 20s. And that was the first time that I found out a little bit about my family background. And she advised me that there were early deaths in the family. So my biological grandfather died at 46, his brother died at 46, his sister died at 52. So, wow. And cousins, there was a lot. So I tucked it away because I was still quite young and didn't have any children at the time. So continued on in my policing career, was diagnosed with a mitral valve prolapse, very minor. Anybody can get it. It's not just something specific to Lois Dietz. And I didn't think much more of it than that until I had started to have children. And then I was a little more concerned about, well, what does this mean? And I was concerned about, as I got older, this age thing where I was getting closer, moving, I was now in my 30s and wasn't sure, how that was going to go. The funniest part about this is when one of my children was in grade 6, I had a couple of doctors mention something about Marfan syndrome. I had a half sibling through my birth mom. Somebody had mentioned it to her because we have very long, the spider fingers. And so I had mentioned it to my son, and he needed to do a science project. So he did a project on Marfan syndrome. And back in the days when you didn't have Google, but you had to look stuff up and go to the library.
Right. And the Dewey Decimal System, and then go to an encyclopedia, right? Flip a page.
Exactly. What, I was dumbfounded because just about we met just about every criteria for in terms of long fingers and toes and crowded teeth and a high arch and just numerous different things. So I brought it to the family doctors, and everybody was, no, you guys are fine. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a healthy police officer. Your boys are very healthy. And it just sat there and nothing changed. And I started to have a few more health issues pop up, and I just kept trying to connect the dots. And this is where I'm saying to your listeners is that, when your gut tells you that something is off, even if, other people are brushing you off, please stick with it. Just keep pushing forward, because I just started to say, this is not normal. There's no reason that I should be dealing with these different things. And it was a cardiologist that was monitoring me because I was in policing. We had one who was working with the police force, and he decided to send me for genetic testing. Where it got complicated was that I was in the province of New Brunswick, Velda, when this first happened. And by the time the request was sent to Nova Scotia, I was transferred to Newfoundland. So the Nova Scotia people had to transfer the file to Newfoundland. And then, so it just goes on, and it just increased the length of time till I was finally diagnosed. The first time they tested me for Marfan, it came back negative. They decided to try this new genetic testing for this thing called Lois Dietz syndrome, which had only been discovered 2 years before that. And thank heavens they did, because I tested positive for it.
Mm.
So then my children, who at that time were in high school, again, another transfer came into the province of Ontario. Before my children could be tested, we were transferred again to Saskatchewan. We had to fly back. So it really put a lot, the system is not set up to work well anyway. And then you add those things into it. But we
Mhm.
just kept pushing through and finding ways to deal with it. Eventually, my youngest son also tested positive. So it was an interesting journey. What happened after that, my birth mother, of course, I let her know, and a whole biological family group were diagnosed. I couldn't get any follow-up. And so Nova Scotia, Dr. Horn, Velda, she said if I could get myself and my son to Halifax, that they would do the workups and things that we needed there. And they did some testing. And then when I was visiting someone in Newfoundland, I got a call that I had an aneurysm. It was 12 weeks before my 46th birthday, which was the same age my biological grandfather passed at, his brother passed at. So it's a very convoluted story, but through it all, it's just, I want your listeners to understand, keep pushing, listen to your gut. Just because you don't have symptoms, and I didn't have any overt major symptoms that would tell someone I had an aneurysm developing, which you folks are obviously aware of it. Don't, let that shut you down to saying maybe there is something going on, because it's an easy answer for people in a healthcare system that's overwhelmed.
I had heard somebody say, if you can't connect the issues, think connective tissues.
Oh, I love that.
That's kind of what you're saying, right? So when I saw on your website, connect the dots, that made me, I just popped into my head. If you can't connect the issues, think connective tissues. And part of acing your healthcare journey would include saying, we've got to push for this, because, I don't know that every doctor thinks outside of the box. A lot of times doctors pigeonhole people just visually, and they don't think to even go there to do the genetic testing. So I really have a deep appreciation for, how much you went to investigate this. And that part of that is because of your background and your career. But I think that's a huge takeaway. And I'm glad that you repeated that.
Thank you. Yeah. I just really feel that we have to, and I think a lot I feel sorry for people in the healthcare field, because I don't think it's easy to put us in a box because they're overwhelmed. And I know I've had doctors will say, ugh, like I know right up front they don't want to see me. And then I know the ones that are very interested because I have something that's different. But don't let that cause you to walk away is what I want the listeners to take away, because just be compassionate in that they are overworked. They're trying to do the best they can. Yes, in any profession, you have people that you kind of wonder why they joined that profession. It happens everywhere. Right. But just to keep pushing through.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such an interesting story. And even though your life changed in a moment, in an instant, I like to look at it as if you were given a blessing in finding out, right? So now other people know, and now they can be followed in a different way as well earlier in their life too. So, you kind of almost have to find a way to flip that script a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now's the time that I would want to be asking a million questions about the differences between Canadian healthcare and American, but I'm going to let Velda kind of take those questions, because I'm just sitting in amazement. I am such an instant gratification person. I can't even have doctors on my team if they won't get back to me. Like I literally can lose my mind. I have zero tolerance for lack of returning my call. I had one of my doctors the other day, I tried to call, there was no button to like speak with anybody. It was call if you're scheduling surgery, call if you're having a payment, anything else, go online and do it in the portal. And I was like, I'm going to tell them I want to pay a bill. They'll pick up if you say that. And I said, oopsie, pushed the wrong button. I need to talk to Dr. So-and-so right now. So I can't, I don't know how people, that's a different level of patience I feel like the Canadians are forced to have. But before I go on my tangent, Velda, I'm going to turn this portion over to you.
Well, thank you, Karen. I was just wondering from Lindsay, I'd like to know, did you have to pay for your genetic testing when you had it done in New Brunswick?
It was, no, I had it done out of Newfoundland and I didn't.
Newfoundland.
And that was the big issue for going with the second test. They had already spent a lot of money with the first one and it came back negative.
Right.
It took them a little while to make that decision. And thank heavens they did, because who knows where my journey would have ended up.
Yeah, I know. Well, Dr. Horn told me that I get genetic testing done in Halifax and it would be covered by Medicare. So
Yeah,
there's no cost.
yeah.
Well, that's a good thing because even though you have to wait and you have to be patient, like Karen isn't.
Exactly. I do it. That's hard. Are you guys,
It is.
do you hear often the Think Aorta campaign? I know it launched in Canada last
Yeah.
year. What I can't help but to jump in, Velda, because I'm just curious. I have to know. You
Go
know,
ahead.
I don't know much about Canada, right? I think I've been there once, maybe twice, but I just picture that you've got all these people closer to the border, lots of cities, and then you keep going north, and it just is more and more and
The
more spread
rural.
out, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So people literally almost have, if you're coming from further north, you've got one shot to get it right at the closest ER to make that decision that somebody needs a CT scan. So how is that happening there? Is it, because I know I've heard, I had a big meeting with emergency medicine doctors in the States. It was the American College for Emergency Physicians, and they said diagnosing a dissection, let alone aortic disease, is one of the hardest things because you just don't see it very often.
Yeah.
You just don't see people coming in with a 7 centimeter aneurysm or having had a dissection. And I'll even try to share and educate people about Think Aorta, and I'll get physicians that'll say, Think Aorta, I think about it all the time. And I say to them, but how long does it take your ED to get somebody to think about it and ask questions about family medical history and stuff like that before they're thinking to order a CT scan? And that's when he's like, well, you know what, she's right, so I'll take a poster,
And CT
so.
scan, but also refer like to genetic testing after, like you want to like get it is there an aortopathy there, and then is it like a genetic, a hereditary aortopathy or not? And I
Okay.
feel like this is started, like Think Aorta is a great campaign to educate those frontline workers. And I
Mhm.
think the next step is to understand those clinical red flags of these patients when they go to the ER. What are the signs that gets them to the ER, and what in that ER system, what did the ED thought of first? And so understand this
Mhm.
data and understand how the patient got like cared for or managed first to
Mhm.
properly after that care develop a proper referral pathway for these patients from the emergency department. I think there is definitely a major like point of entry of these patients that happens through the ER. So it's an important part to raise that education and raise that awareness. Absolutely. So Think Aorta is a huge milestone to
Mhm.
start changing this. And also like looking into these clinical red flags as
Mhm.
well.
Okay. Velda, do you have any other questions or thoughts?
Well,
Things that maybe the
I just
community's
wanted
talked
to
about?
talk to Cynthia about being over in Halifax with Dr. Horn. I had an interview on CBC Radio in the month of September, Aortic Dissection Awareness Month, and I told my story to Mitch Cormier on CBC Radio, and Dr. Horn was on the line too, talking about how many people get misdiagnosed and how many people have died and haven't been they haven't had an autopsy and they don't know why they died, so they just say died of a massive heart attack. So it's really like there has to be an awareness done. So that show that I did on CBC Radio went across the country, but I got 2 people contacted me about it. So it's just like there must be a faster way to get people to know about aortic dissection. And so I feel like when I go out and I'm walking along with my cane and people are looking at me. I feel self-conscious and I feel like having a big sign that says, I survived an aortic dissection. That's why I'm like this.
I'll
So
make you a shirt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you
Well,
just
and
wear the aortic hope gear and people are going to say, what is that? And that
I
gives you a
do.
chance to bring up, right? I know that you do. And then you get to
Yeah.
talk about aortic disease. And I do want to say thank you because I did notice that you have links directly to our support groups. And I can't remember, I saw the bereavement, the caregiver, and the general. And now we should probably get you that link so that people that come to the LDS page can be directly linked up to Velda's page as well. And they'll have a place to go too. So I'm going to quickly check in with Josh, just see if there's been any other comments or anything we need to address.
I have been engrossed in today's story. Let's see. We answered the how do we get to the list. Molly says, thank you, Dr. Jida and Cynthia. This is incredible. Natalie says, it's very exciting to hear about things going on in Canada. First, for me, this is so encouraging. We need to know more about what's going on in our country. And Dan has joined the chat. Dan says, my
Hi,
doctor
Dan.
asked about getting a tissue sample, so I handed her a Kleenex.
That's a good. I'm going to use that, Dan. That was very good. I broke that up. That was wonderful. Thank you. Speaking to what Natalie's saying, what are some of the exciting things happening in Canada? Because I know here we're also into 3D modeling and printing individualized aortas. I was taken on a trip last year through my aorta. On the CT scan, we got to go, instead of looking from outside, we went in. And that was the moment I discovered I had also dissected into my carotid, which nobody had said before. And I was like, wait a minute, can you back that camera back up? And my cardiologist is like, yeah, it's right there. I said, we're going to have to talk offline because I don't think you realize that we just discovered that this minute. And we did. And we actually did just discover it because you could see it from the inside, right? It was like a cool voyage or something like that movie. I can't remember. Maybe it was called Fantastic Voyage, where they shrink down and go through the body. Anyway, what are some of the exciting things, research or, any conversations about new surgical techniques, just anything that's going on in Canada?
Yeah, so well, if I want to give you more the political context, I'll talk
Please go ahead.
political and
Yeah.
I'll talk the research context as well.
Sure.
But the political context, I think this opportunity of Canada building a rare disease strategy. So in Canada, so for example, in the US, you have the Orphan Drug Act, for example, and you have the NORD, which is it's all these different networks of for rare disease centers that includes different niche, like specific centers that follow specific type of rare diseases. So for sure, vascular and aortic, they exist within the NORD network. So we do not have that in Canada. We do not
Okay.
have what we call centers of expertise or networks of expertise for rare diseases. So this is something that we are advocating for, that this is, we want to build something that is specific for aortic diseases in Canada. And we have the experts. We just want to structure it. We want to more systemize it so that it becomes a national structure where experts, clinicians, and researchers work together, and it's easy, it's smooth to just bring all these people together. So, and it's funded by the government, helps the business case that will help improve the healthcare system and the outcomes, and improve, saving money and saving costs, so that these patients don't get to have a catastrophic event, and that will be more costly for the healthcare system eventually. So that's the opportunity that's happening right now in Canada, and we don't want to miss that boat for sure. On the research side, so the CANACT is the first step, but I'm going to talk from the researchers that we work with, but the next step is that biobank, and the biobank is it's going to be interesting because we're going to take patient cells from patients, and we're going to change them to stem cells, and from these stem cells we can create any type of tissues and any type of organs that we can, and test live, like in a dish, in a petri dish, any opportunity for drugs or looking for biomarkers for these diseases, etc. So it will help improve on that research so well. Cynthia talked to one of our researchers, Benedict, when we met in Calgary few weeks ago. Benedict is also Dr. Halgrimson leading a really nice initiative, as I said, the facial. So like how all these different research initiatives to help identify these patients and better care for these patients eventually is one of the biggest priorities.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff, especially biobank.
Yeah.
So technological, so scientific.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I want to give Velda another opportunity if there's any other last minute questions, and then one last check-in with Josh, and then I think we'd be ready to wrap things up. Velda?
Yeah, I think of questions and they're just like little bubbles. They float through my brain and boop, they're gone. But this was very interesting and I loved your story, Cynthia. It was awesome. And you're a police officer, that's great, but you can't do that anymore. So you're busy doing this. Do you have many members of Lois Dietz? Like, do you know of many members?
Do you mean in my family, or are you asking Jida just in terms of
No, in the country, like in Canada, do you have any support groups or anything?
Yes, there are support groups. There's a great, the Lois Dietz syndrome website is fantastic.
Okay.
There's the phone line now, which I would have loved years ago. So there really is, and just more people that are showing up that have Lois Dietz, which is kind of amazing. So yeah, it's not as lonely as it was before, that's for sure.
It's very lonely. When I finished my surgery, it was in 2020, but I didn't know anything about aortic hope in the United States because there wasn't one in Canada. But I was asking so many healthcare people that I know, who has had this before. I want to talk to them because you're lonely. You don't know what to expect and you don't know what to think about. You don't know if something's going to happen that you should know because they just let you out of the hospital and you're just like free willy. They go swim, go swim.
Absolutely. And the connections are really important, Velda, and you're right. And now I know about you. So I didn't know there was an Aortic Hope Canada. So I will now get connected.
You could join that
folks.
page. Yeah,
So
you
now
can
we
join
made
that
new
page.
friends. Yay, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So if there's any other patients that when they watch this that are in Canada that do not have a known CTD, they can still come to your page, right? They can still go to GATA. They can go to find out additional resources. I mean, we're still people that have aortic disease. You just have other systemic areas in the body, other areas that need to be watched, but we're all still underneath of the same umbrella. And so I would highly encourage people that are watching this to check them out. Check out the page. There's still a lot of really great resources. If you've had your valve replaced and you're going to go to the dentist, you might need antibiotics before, so there's just this information I think that crosses over for everybody. It's a very easy, friendly page to navigate through. And as we mentioned before, GATA, what is that? That's, what does that stand for?
Genetic aortic disorders. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So you can check them out as well and then learn of other resources and hopefully connect with lots of people, whether it's on Aortic Hope, Canadian Private Forum, or it's through the LDSF. So I can't get all the letters off the top of my head. I had a bubble pop, just like Velda said. LDSF
Canada.
Right. Just go. I'm like CANADA. Right. There's a lot of letters there.
LDSF. We used to do C, but then now we write Canada because it's just
just easier.
The name of
That's
the country.
Yeah. Well, I would like to check in one last time. Josh, anything?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see here. Martha says, this is a terrific and informative session. Thank you. May I ask about clarity? And that's all capitals, CLARITY ?
Yeah. So Clarity is a registry. So it's not a register, it's based on a registry, but it's a study that is led by Dr. Shane Morris in the States. And it's to help improve on surgical thresholds for pediatric patients to know when exactly we need to. So it's building an algorithm to help support decisions for surgeries. And so we support Dr. Morris with different resources for Clarity. But the most exciting part is that once we're going to have data in the CANACT registry, this will also help in supporting that study and improving the algorithm study for Clarity with Dr. Shane Morris. So,
Hi.
Excellent answer. I give it an A+. Susan Komar says, Sue Wendy, quote, one ER doctor used the D-dimer blood test as an aid. Her saying was, if D-dimer is high, better image the guy to help with diagnosis. Is this ringing any bells?
No, but it's an interesting saying.
Okay. And Natalie
Very
says,
interesting.
last time I was in the ER, the doctor said the same, Susan. So we have some confirmation anecdotally.
There you
Or
go. Say that again. If the D dimer's high.
better image the guy to help with diagnosis.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Or we
That's
launch some
interesting.
kind of subplot. I don't know. This could be code speak.
Okay. It could be.
Well, I want to
Could be.
thank everyone so much for this.
Yeah. Thanks everybody
Thank
who
you.
was watching. We appreciate all of your comments, and special thank you to you, Jida, and to you, Cynthia. It's so great. It's our first time actually going live. I know we've talked about this really before, and I'm glad we finally got to do it, especially now that Aortic Hope Canada is established. And I'm so excited that we got to have you participate with this, Velda. You have
Thank
a
you.
cheering
Thank
squad
you.
back there. You have a lot of fans.
It was fun, lots of fun.
Yeah.
Aw.
Thank you guys again so much. We really appreciate it. And Josh, were you able to get the link up there for the LDSFC?
I nailed it like a pro.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect, as you would, as only you could. So in case you want to reach out, have questions, you want to learn more, take a look at that website that's listed below. And again, thank you so much for joining us, Jida and Cynthia. Really
thank you
appreciate
so
your
much.
time.
Thank you. Thank
We
you
will
very
so
much.
definitely do this again. Probably, maybe let's do it around September for Aortic Disease Awareness Month. I think we should.
Sounds like a plan,
Okay.
good plan.
And to all
Amazing.
of you, to all of you, please click like, please click subscribe, and there's the bell, so that you're notified when we go live again, which is happening tomorrow night. And click share, because that's the key. Is really sharing the information creates more awareness and allows people to become more educated, and then they can receive the support that they need. So thank you guys again so much, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.